now we're ready to actually hook up the habit adder. And to do that, we want to use our handle submit event. And inside of here, we want to emit an event that the Dopamina Box tag can listen for. Okay, so I want you to give that a try. This is your challenge. If you remember how to emit events, call the emit function here to emit a new habit added event. So we call the emit function with habit added as the string name of the event inside of this handle submit method, and then add a listener on the Dopamina Box tag that logs got it when the habit added event is received. So that means you go to the Dopamina Box tag inside of index.Imba, and on the habit adder tag, you're going to listen for the event that you just set up on habit adder. Go ahead and give that a try, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so we're going to say emit habit added. That means whenever this method is called, Imba will emit a custom event called habit added. So we'll go to the parent tag of habit adder, which is Dopamina Box, and find where habit adder is, and we want to listen for those events. So we'll say at habit added, and we want to log some message just so we can check that this works. And we could say equals console.log, but now we know about modifiers, we can just say habit added.log, got it. Let's try this. So clicking this add button runs the handle submit method, which emits the habit added event. And we see the message logged here because we've handled it right here. Let's go back to habit adder. I'm going to remove the challenge. And the next thing we need to do is find a way to pass along the value of name along with this event. So how do we pass data along with the event? Well, the emit function accepts a second parameter, which can be any data that you want to pass along. And oftentimes we'll pass an object with a bunch of values, or you can just pass in a single value. So I'll pass name. Name is this prop here. That's the one that we want to send. So this now emits an event called habit added, and it passes along the value of name. So let's see how we access that on the other side inside of the Dopamina Box tag. So instead of this log modifier here, let's change this to an actual event handler. We'll say handle habit added, and we have to define that method. So I'll put that here. I'm going to put the event object as a parameter, console.log hello. Let's just make sure this is working. We should get hello. Cool. So we passed along, in addition to the name of our custom event habit added, we also passed along a second parameter, which was some data, which was that name value. How do we access that? Well, it's passed along on the event object under the detail property. So e.detail is the value that we passed to the emit function. So I'm going to log that. And before I click it, think about what you're going to see when I click this. Do you have a guess? Untitled. And let me try changing this to test. And we see test. That's because the name prop in the habit adder is bound to this form. So whatever I type here is the value of name. And name is what we passed along here. And it gets sent along as the detail property of the event object. I feel like detail is not the easiest to remember name, but just know that detail is where the data that's sent along with a custom event is stored. So now that we have a reference to that new name, we can create a new habit. So let's say const new habit. We'll make a new habit object with name equals e.detail. Done is false. And ID equals nano ID. We'll talk about that in just a second. So there's a new habit object. Let's push it onto our habits array. That's this prop here. So we'll say habits.push new habit to push that onto the end of the array. And let's give it a try. Cool, it works. And we can click it. We can delete it. We can edit the name. Everything works just like any of the other habits, but now we can add our own habits. So that's great. And I want to reiterate how the rendering works in Imba. In Imba, your UI is re-rendered every time an event is handled. And this is an event handler. It's handling the habit added event, which is a custom event we defined. And so when we update the data, when we update the habits with a new habit, because this is in an event handler, Imba is going to re-render the UI based on the latest data after that happens. And the new data includes a new habit. So when it re-renders the UI, we see the new habit here in our UI. So I said I would explain why we have nano ID here. So nano ID, I'm including this nano ID NPM module. And we used nano ID briefly earlier in the course, you may remember. I import it here, and nanoID is basically a single function that returns back a string that is a unique ID. So it's basically a random string, and you can use it as an ID for objects. Comes in handy when you need it. Okay, let's go and do one more quick thing in habit adder. Forgot to delete this old challenge. I'm going to give you a new challenge, which is it's a real simple one. I want you to reset the value of the name prop after submitting the form. So right now, if it says test and I submit it, it still says test. I want it to reset back to untitled. See if you can make it do that, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, to do that, all we need to do is set the value that we want here. So we can say name equals untitled. And that's after we've done this emit and sent along the name value to be handled by Dopamina Box. Then we just assign name back to untitled. And let's test it out. Cool. Maybe this would be nicer as an empty string rather than the word untitled. And then we could use a placeholder on our input here. Placeholder equals habit name, something like that. So now we have a little message, habit name, then we can type it in, exercise, add, and then it resets. Cool. So now we can actually add our own habits into our Dopamina Box. We can add them and delete them and edit them. It's starting to have all the functionality that we need.